Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Vonage Knowledge Quest series. This is actually the first for a small subset of Knowledge Quest, which we're doing specifically for video. So we have a session today on doing dial in and out with video sessions. So we're glad to see everybody here. If you have any questions as we go through, feel free to add them to the chat or the Q&A, and we will get those picked up. We have a section at the very end for Q&A. But otherwise, glad everybody could be here. Switch over because I've only got so many screens. My name is Chris Tankersley. I am a staff senior developer advocate here for Vonage, working on integration and video. So I'll be doing the technical portion of our workshop today. And then I'd like to also introduce Michael Vernick, who is one of our customer solutions architects.
Hello, everybody. Yes, Michael Vernick. I am a customer-facing solution architect, focusing on our video APIs, helping our customers come up to speed, learning how to help architect their systems.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. So I will hand this first part off to you, Michael.
So yeah, we're just going to put up a little agenda, what we're going to be talking about today. First, we're going to explain what we mean by dial in and dial out, talk about some pros and advantages of using dial in and dial out, talk about some use cases. And then I'm going to hand it back to Chris, who's actually going to get into the technical details, show you folks a lot of code, how you can actually build this out to implement the dial in and dial out. And then at the end, we'll have a question and answer session. All right, so first, what are we talking about when we say dial in and dial out? And basically, it allows clients or people who are on a regular telephony network to dial into a Vonage video session, or allowing a video session to dial out to a standard PSTN telephone number. Next slide, please. So why would you want to do this? So in general, dial in and dial out improves accessibility, right? You don't have to make all of your clients or people have good internet access to get into a video session. People can be in places where there's limited internet bandwidth, for example, in rural areas, or even while driving, where they're coming in and out of good mobile networks. From a flexibility standpoint, allowing anybody to join your video session, they can be on any phone, an old flip phone, they can be on a wall phone, an old PSTN phone. There's no downloads that are needed for an internet app on a phone. And if somebody has firewall issues, this is just a standard PSTN network that you can call in from, and that it bypasses any kinds of firewalls. Again, somebody could be on a flip phone, so you're extending reach to lots of people who may not have a smartphone, who may only have a standard telephony network like a PSTN network. Lastly, we can provide ways to secure the calls by adding in passcodes or pins, so people can only join video sessions with a specific passcode. We can connect with our fraud detection to make sure that people dialing in are actually not scammers or spammers. And also, lastly, you can set up the system so if you have a specific set of users in a specific geographic area, you can specify the data centers within Vonage that are used to serve those people who are dialing in. So we're going to talk about some use cases of that, right? So you may have field employees who are in places with limited bandwidth. You may have traveling staff who are on the road a lot who need to dial into various sprints or meetings within your company. Another example is education in rural areas. You might have a sick person at home who wants to join a session at school. They may have limited bandwidth. It allows them to just use a regular telephone to dial into a session at their school. There may be international participants who want to be able to join into your video sessions, and they may have limited internet again, seniors who or other people who are not tech savvy, who don't have smartphones, they can just dial a number to access the video session. We have a bunch of customers who are using this service for government services and legal hearings. So people can join your local community sessions each week, your government sessions. And finally, another area where we have some customers is using this during disaster recovery or emergencies. When internet bandwidth may go down in certain places, the standard old PSTN network allows you to get in to a video session. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who's actually going to take you through the code and how you can actually build this kind of system.
Sure, thanks. So from a technical perspective, this is kind of the general architecture that we think about when we're talking about dial-in. So kind of in the center of everything is your application server itself. And when I say application server, this is the part that manages the backend part of your video session, not necessarily like a mobile client or the actual like website that a customer joins, but whatever is handling like generating client tokens, working with archives, that kind of application server. So you've got a couple people that are joining through browsers and having the normal kind of experience that you want, but then you may have an outline person that can't join for whatever reason. What we actually can do is using the Vonage Video API, we have a SIP interconnect process that will talk to the Vonage Voice API, and the customer can actually dial into a telephone number provided by Vonage or ported over to Vonage that will then talk to the video API through the SIP interconnect and kind of make everything work. So we're taking care of all of the back half part of this and boiling it down for you to basically just accept a telephone call for the voice API and then just tell your video application to join the voice call. We handle all of the backend part of it. Now, the cool part about this is because it uses our voice API, you can also do the reverse. So you can also dial out to someone. So if someone's in a call and drops out and you know their telephone number, you could actually use this exact same system to dial out to them. The architecture really doesn't change. The only difference is instead of accepting a telephone call through the voice API, we will actually make a dial out through the voice API. And what that means is your video application can be much more robust because you can handle both of those situations. While we're not going to go over it today, we also do fully support SIP as well. So you don't even have to necessarily use a PSTN or regular telephone line. You can actually handle SIP connections as well. And all of this is bridged together on the back end that we take care of. So you can try to follow along with this if you want. I fully understand everybody is remote. Copying and pasting is not going to work. While the slides will be up, and I'll be explaining, and you can kind of copy everything down. We do have all of this sample code available. So if you go to github.com/Vonage community, actually at the bottom of our main preamble, there is a section for video that links both to our learning server, which is the backend portion of all of this, that app server part. And then we have a ton of web samples, including just the basic video chat we'll be basing this off of today, as well as a fully baked SIP demo as well, with all of this all put together that you can see run right out of the box. But to get all this to work, you obviously need a Vonage developer account. So I believe right below us on the screen, there is a create your Vonage account link. If you haven't signed up for one, you can run through that and get signed up. The backend server does require Node 18, which is a little bit older version of Node, so it should work on any of the current versions as well. If you're running this locally, you will need some sort of tunneling service like ngrok or stunnel or something similar. I'll be using ngrok for this just to kind of show it off. And then some sort of modern browser. Most modern browsers work just fine with our video API. I'll be using Chrome as it tends to have the best compatibility with a lot of the video APIs. But other things like Firefox, Safari, those do work as well. And then since we're talking about dial in and out, obviously you'll need some sort of telephone. It can be a mobile, it can be a landline, doesn't matter. As long as it can dial a telephone number, will work for anything. So I'll just be using my cell phone for the demo portion of this later. So let's kind of get started about putting everything together. So all you would need to do is go download the backend server, which will actually handle the part of accepting the telephone call, making the SIP call connection from our voice to the front end, and then actually connecting to telling our front end to connect to the video service. You can download this from GitHub, and then if you have Node installed, you should already have npm install, so you can run that. There is a configuration file which I will show here when we get to the demo portion, with a couple of things you'll need to put in from uh, your account itself, including your API secret and key, as well as some application information. And then everything's all pre-configured to run, so you can run npm start, and that'll kick the server up. The client-side code runs all kind of by itself. There's no additional need for a server. So you can download, in this case, we're going to start with the basic video chat because that's really all you kind of need. You can download those files to your computer. There is a configuration file you need to point to a backend server. While we do allow you to put in like a predefined session ID and token for this, because we need to initiate a dial-in, we'll actually need the whole backend server part of it, which is why we have you grab both. So we'll edit that, and I'll show that configuration here when we do the demo. And then all we need to do is open that up to a browser, and then it kind of works. So for handling the inbound call, really all we need to mostly do is accept the incoming call through the Vonage voice API, and then our application server will have it. The arrows are a little bit misleading. What's actually going to happen is the telephone number is going to call Vonage. Vonage is going to redirect back to our application server to figure out what we want to do next, and we'll send some configuration to say, hey, join this, what we call a conversation, which is basically a conference call. And then there's some back and forth between our voice API and the telephone and the application server to kind of move everything into the correct spot. Now, on Vonage itself, because we do use the voice API, you will need to go in and at least fill in the answer URL and event URL. For our demo application, there's a route called SIP VAPI answer and then events. The answer URL is a URL that will actually accept an incoming telephone call, and it assumes that you're going to return something called an NCCO, which is a call control object that tells the voice API what to do next. While we'll go over the code here in a moment, basically we're going to tell it, take the person that called in and transfer them to a conversation, as well as give them a little message. And then that person will sit there in that call till everything gets put together. The event URL is a way for us to actually receive events from the voice API. So we're actually going to be waiting until someone calls in, and then once they've joined and been transferred to the conference call, we will actually then tell the video API to then turn around and connect automatically to that voice call. So you don't have to click any buttons to automatically dial. We can actually set it up so that the video API can automatically go ahead and connect right away. And obviously, you'll need a telephone number, so you'll need to link your telephone number to an application. I already have a telephone number that I had through Vonage for our testing. You can purchase numbers through Vonage if you don't already have one to set up. We do have APIs to facilitate this, and that'll be a little bit more reasonable when we talk about some of the considerations later on. But you do need to at least have one telephone number set up and ready to go. So I've gone ahead and I've linked my 833 number to this demo to go ahead and work. So now, what all actually needs to happen? So the first thing we need to do is we need to answer the telephone call from the user. So here we have, I don't think it's showing. That's not showing my pointer. No, it kind of is. So here we have a route set up in our backend. Like I said, it's called SIP slash VAPI slash answer. That's what the voice API points to. So what will happen is when the phone call comes in, we will actually look up what session ID is being used. So we have a find session ID for room method in the sample code that actually looks up a room name to a session ID. And in this case, we're going to connect to the session just called session. And then we have a helper from our Vonage SDK called NCCO Builder. This thing allows us to actually build an NCCO without having to know all of the JSON constructs. You can build it programmatically. And then we'll actually look up a conversation to see if one exists. So if we have a conversation, which I said, like I said, is basically just a conference call, we go and we look up that ID because we'll need that ID to forward the caller to. If we don't have one, we set one up. And while we're not using all of these options here, we can do things like set a PIN number that we'll need to verify later. We give it a name so that we can find it in the logs later. So it'll just generate a random name for us. And then we're going to store the session ID that it's connected to and the telephone number that it's connected to. This is important because we need to know what incoming uh, telephone number this is coming in on for the SIP connection later on. So we can match a conversation to a telephone number because you can actually have multiple telephone numbers going into the same conference call. And then we just reset all that. So we pull up any existing conversation information and we add a new NCCO action called conversation with that conversation name and then a bunch of extra parameters here, basically just to say, go ahead and just transfer this person over. We don't really need a whole lot more than that. And then we return that NCCO. So our NCCO builder will turn that into a blob of JSON automatically for you, return that. The voice API will read that blob of JSON, which will basically transfer this person to the conference call and then handle that. And then that's all we really need to do on the voice side to kind of bridge someone into a conversation. So now the next thing we need to do is when that person calls in, we need to connect them to the video conference. I don't expect you to be able to read this code. It's very small. I'm going to zoom in on here in a minute. But there's basically a couple of steps we need to go through to now bridge the video call into that conversation. The first part of that is generating a client token. So this is a front end token. We're going to actually allow the SIP connection through our SIP interconnect to join the video session. Part of that is it needs a client ID. And this is a thing that tells it like what roles you have inside the voice call. So in this case, we're going to give it a very basic role of client. That basically means it's not going to be able to really publish anything because there's really no video to publish because we're just using straight voice. It doesn't have any moderation tools built into it because we're going to assume moderation is going to happen on the front end with an actual video user. And then we're going to pass in what conversation name we want to connect to. So the SIP interconnect will take all of this information, put it all together for us. And then we will actually do a SIP connection back to Vonage. Even though the customer is calling in through a PSTN, the video API will then connect to the voice API through SIP. Again, this is something we automatically set up for you. All you have to do is link a telephone number. You don't have to know any SIP or go through and set up any SIP configuration. The video API and the voice API are already preset to handle this. So we take that client connection token, which is going to connect to the video session. We set up some SIP authorization. So this does require your uh, Vonage account ID and secret, which if you're coming from the OpenTalk side, those are a little bit different things. So the account master account key and secret for Vonage. And then we need to know what SIP address to connect to. Again, since we handle all of this, it's already pre-set up for you. So it's basically going to be SIP colon the telephone number. So in my case, it's going to be my 833 number, and then at sip.nexmo.com. Then that will actually talk to our SIP interconnect system, bridge everything automatically for you, and go from there. So once we have the connection information set up, then we can do an initiation call. So on our video API, there's an initiate SIP call method. You give it the session ID you want to connect to and that set of options that we set up, and we just tell it to connect. And what we will do is that will tell the system to go out and make the SIP call. That will bridge your video call into the SIP interconnect, which will then turn around and connect you to the conversation. And then we just store some information off. So we store what is that person's connection ID if we need to do moderation later, as well as stream ID. So if we need to manipulate that stream, like put it into archives or anything like that later on, we store those off. And then we just save all the information back to the system so we can always pull that back up. But the big part here is the Vonage.video.initiate SIP call. That does all the heavy lifting of moving the video call into the SIP system. And then just kind of to clean some things up, if everybody hangs up in the call, then we want to make sure that we go through and we disconnect the client. It will automatically disconnect after a while, but this will be a way for us to easily go through and hang up forcibly if we need to. If we know everybody's done, kind of shut everything down. So we do the disconnect client, we cut off that SIP client, and then kind of go from there. And then, so that's the video side. On the voice side, we can actually tell when the conversation itself is done. So if everybody disconnects from the conversation, even if the video call is still going, if everybody disconnects from the phone, we know we want to go ahead and disconnect from there as well. So we listen for some events from the voice API to say the conversation itself is completed, meaning everybody hung up. Then we go through same process, disconnect the SIP client, remove it from the video call itself, and just kind of let some cleansing go on. So we do have documentation for all of this. If you go to developer.vonage.com, that's all of our main developer documentation. We have a video section. We will make sure that these slides get posted so you can click on these links later. But all this is also available through our REST API. So if you don't use our SDKs, you can manually call the initiate SIP and all of the voice API things directly through a REST API. And we do actually have a guide and user guide for this dial-in section. So if you go to our developer docs and under the build and manage, there's a bunch of use cases. We have this SIP guide already pre-set up for you, walks you through everything we're going through today, and you can get all the code and play with it either on our VCR cloud runtime system or on your local machine, which I'll be running it from today. So now we can actually make the telephone call. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing for a moment and switch over our screen share to my desktop so we can kind of see how things are working. I want to do entire screen. And I apologize, I have a 4K screen, so it might look a little small for some things. But here we have the actual server application itself. Make this a little bit bigger. Whoops, not quite that big. So the backend server has a little bit of configuration already pre-set up for it. We have an application ID, which is a Vonage application ID from our Vonage dashboard. The private key itself, which is how we authenticate all of our server information. We have our account ID and secret, which we'll need for the SIP Connect, and then the conference number itself. And then in here, we've got all of our events and everything. All that code is copied over. I won't bore you with it again. But here we have it all set up to run. And then on the client side, here I'm in just the basic video chat. Make that a little bigger. And we're just going to point it to running at our local server. The local video demo, it runs at localhost 3000. So we have that set to point to that. And that'll just be, that way it can go through and it can get a client token and knows where to get all the information from and work with that. So, find my thing here. If I do an npm start, this will kick up the server itself. So we can see here it's listening on port 3000. And we've got ngrok already running here because I was testing it earlier, just to make sure I have the forwarding addresses. So when I start ngrok, I get a forwarding address. This is partially what we'll use for the answer in the event URLs. So we have this matched, this URL matched up to, for example, this route, SIP VAPI events. And then we have the answer, that style. We have answer in here as well. But those are where we get those route setups. So I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to Chrome. And I'm going to paste in that address. Whoops. And join. Oh, whoops. I'm using the. Let's open the correct file. So I don't need to look at the backend server. There. Projects, demo, samples, basic video chat. Open with Chrome. There we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and allow myself, and I'm going to go ahead and mute myself just to be safe. But here we've actually connected to the video session running on my local machine. And now what I should be able to do, so I have my phone right here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that telephone number. So I'm going to dial the 833 number. And what we should see happen is I should get a connection back here, which will represent our voice portion of the call. So I'll dial it here and hope I don't believe my AirPods will break. There we go. So there we go. Always for that. I don't know if the audio came through or not, but it fed back. So hopefully that got it. But you can see there for a moment, it kind of pulsed green there as I talked. In the back end here, we can see it's sending a whole bunch of SIP events as it goes through, and the voice API is talking to the SIP connect and going through there. But what that allows us to do is actually bridge the two together automatically with realistically a fair amount of code. Most of it is handled by, like I said, the voice API and the video SIP interconnect automatically for us, so we don't have to do too much. Pull back up, stop that screen share. And we'll go back to our slides. Yeah, so that really kind of shows how easy it is to kind of put them together. Um, So now let's talk about some security and usability considerations. You'll notice basically I had just one single telephone number you could dial in and it would just kind of work. One thing you do want to think about is PIN numbers potentially for incoming calls. You could generate these on demand. We kind of alluded to them a little bit in the sample code where we set a PIN number, we just don't use it in the demo itself, but that's an easy way to make sure that whoever's coming in, not just robocalls into the number or gets into a call, they need to have some sort of PIN along with it. You can use any of our moderation tooling for this as well. Since each SIP call is a connection back to the video API, you can use the moderation tools that are built in. So you may want to wire in being able to mute or disconnect forcibly from the front end for someone who has actual moderation abilities, uh, because you want to be able to actually handle any bad actors that do tend to get in there, because you may have someone connect that is supposed to be there, but then needs to be moderated for whatever reason. You can kind of decide, do you want local numbers or long distance or toll-free numbers? Really, that's kind of up to you. Most systems do present a variety of options to make it either cheaper for someone or easier for someone to dial into. The nice thing is, since it's all wired into Vonage, we have a full numbers API. You can buy numbers on demand and release them on demand and get pretty much buy a voice capable telephone number for incoming calls whenever you get someone who wants to do a voice call. And you can, like I said, decide if it's local, or you just want to have a bank of long distance numbers or toll free numbers. I have a toll free number I always use to make it easier. And then you can decide, like, do you want to do a number per participant? This can be a little bit more secure because if someone gets a meeting invite and they don't make that meeting, that number is not going to last any longer than that one time. You can even do things like once a telephone number has been connected, make it no longer usable, so don't accept any other connections from there. Um, you can do other additional things like multi-factor authentication, or caller ID verification. The incoming call does have a caller information, so you can make sure that if Alice is the one that's supposed to be calling in, and we've given her this number to call into, is the number that's being dialed in one that we know from her? And then multi-factor, you can do other things like use our verified product to be able to like send the PIN to the customer and then be able to use that on the verify on the way back in. You may want to do things like waiting rooms for people that call in early, because if they know the number ahead of time, they may call in. Our voice API allows you to put people in a waiting room. You can play music, all that kind of stuff. You just kind of have to when someone calls in, to tell it, you know, play this audio track or do whatever. But then wait for the video call to start, and you can move people to a full room with everybody together. And then when we did have it pop up before all the feedback, you can do better visual indicators for a caller, because it just kind of looks much more like a generic person who just has their camera off. So you may want to put in more visual indicators to let someone know that it is a audio call as opposed to someone with just their video itself off. And I'll hand this back over to Michael.
Thanks, Chris. That was wonderful. Really shows how pretty simple it is to connect and voice into the Vonage video sessions. If you're interested in learning more, we can help you with integration, help you with the knowledge. We have a bunch of sample code. Chris showed the GitHub repos before for the sample code for this, but there's also a lot of other sample code around our APIs and Git. We have something called the Vonage Developer Code Hub. If you have an account within Vonage, we have something called Code Hub, which is our system where we can actually host server-side applications, and there are a ton of sample applications in our Code Hub. We have the Vonage Developer Slack channel, which anybody can join. And finally, for certain organizations, we have solutions engineer and architects who can assist you in getting up to speed with Vonage and helping you build out your custom solutions using our APIs. So if you're interested, we're going to leave this up. You can use these QR codes to either join our developer Slack. Again, it's open to the public, or create a developer account. And with a specific coupon code, you can get 10 euros account credit.
Okay, like I said, like Michael said, we'll leave those up here. If anybody has any questions in the chat, we've got about a half hour or so to go ahead and take those questions. Um, if not, thank you very much for your time. I hope everybody enjoyed it. This will be available on YouTube later as well, because I believe it was actually simulcast there. And then it'll be available for on demand on Crowdcast from here as well. But if nothing else, thank you very much. But we will hang around for a couple of minutes in case there's any questions from anybody. Otherwise, have a nice day. Like I said, feel free to put them either in the chat. I know there is a Q&A section. You can put them in there as well if anybody does have anything. Okay, not seeing anything come through. If you do end up with questions or anything, like we have in there, go ahead and join our developer Slack. You'll be able to get questions or ask questions and get help for any of our products, not just video or voice. Good chance you may be talking to me as one of the people in there. Um, but otherwise, yeah, you can reach out to our support if you have any questions, or to our developer docs. And I thank everybody for watching, and have a nice day.